Recorded.
The following program is paid for by the Lone Star RIA. Welcome to the Massive Passive Show, where you'll hear serious discussions about everything real estate investors encounter building their portfolios. Many radio shows and podcasts talk about real estate investing, but the host of the Massive Passive Show actually do it. Sit back and relax and learn about becoming a massive passive deal maker.
Good morning and welcome to another Massive Passive Show brought to you by the Lone Star RIA. This is James Haney, one of your hosts, and again, we have a very awesome show for you today, very exciting. I've got a special guest, which I will introduce here in just a moment. So if you have a pen and paper, if you're not driving and you're at home watching this on YouTube or just listening on iTunes, get a pen and paper and take some notes. Today is going to be a great show again. We're going to be talking about some creative financing and creative deal structures, and we may even we're also going to go through a case study. But before we get into that, got to do a little business stuff here and let you know that anything that we talk about, any events or any of our vendors, you can always refer to our information at lonestarria.net. That's lonestarreia.net. And again, all of our information is there. Our Facebook group, links to our Facebook groups, links to our YouTube channel, and so forth. And once you get to the site, you'll see where there's a link for Alamo RIA and then also Greater Houston RIA, and they'll take you to those prospective websites. But again, that's lonestarria.net. So today's show is brought to you by Jesus Duran with JD Fence. If you're looking for a fence guy or a fence contractor, you're doing a rehab and you need a fence replaced or built or even repaired, you need to look up Jesus Duran. He's really good, really talented, and as we always say about all of our vendors, they're vetted and they have that great reputation of getting the job done, and to where you don't have to babysit them. A lot of times we've done rehabs and you've had to be on the job so much and basically make sure your contractors are doing the job. These guys, they get it done. So that is, again, Jesus Duran with JD Fence. So again, lonestarria.net, that's where you can find that information. Some upcoming events that we have, again, either take notes or go back and refer to this after the show, but I'm about to breeze through several events that we have coming up. This Tuesday in San Antonio at Alamo RIA, we have our monthly main meeting, and we have Tony Youngs is our keynote speaker, and he's going to be talking about finding great deals in the hidden market, and basically that means finding great deals without for sale signs, and not only finding deals but finding great deals. And then also, and that meeting starts at 6 and goes to about 9:30. And before the meeting, we're also going to be having a bonus free session on how to get started in this crazy market, because this market is crazy and it's pretty unpredictable. Some would say, and some are kind of a little nervous. Which direction is it going to go? So we're going to be having a free bonus session, whether you're a member or a guest. It's going to be free, and the doors open for that at 4:30 to 6. Again, all this information is on our website. We do have some lunch and learns coming up in San Antonio, and we will have the details up on the website coming soon in the next couple of days. Now, if you're in Houston, our next main meeting is next Saturday, and we have the landlord attorney, Ernie Garcia. He's a really good friend of ours. We've gotten to know him really well over the past several months, and he's actually spoken at our meeting before, and then he's also spoke at a couple of our focus groups as well. Very great guy, knows his stuff, and he is all about landlords setting up their leases and making sure that their rental business is set up properly. Because the last thing you want to do is go through, have a problem tenant and go through the eviction process and then find out, there was a mistake that you made, and you may have not even been aware that was a mistake. For example, you may have a tenant call in and say, I ended up with COVID and I had to miss, 2 or 3 weeks of work. Can I get an extra 2 weeks on my rent? And you have a heart and you can just say sure, and then ends up that could possibly bite you in the long run, for if they just flat out stop paying and then you have to evict them. And Ernie's going to cover a lot of that as far as how you set up things and you treat your rental business as a business, and all your decisions are business decisions. So again, that is next Saturday. The doors open from 8:30. We'll be there till noon. We have breakfast tacos, networking. Bring your business cards, make connections. If you're a wholesaler, bring your deals. You'll have an opportunity to present your deals, and you'll have an opportunity to meet buyers. I mean, the focus is going to be landlording, so there's going to be a lot of landlords there, and those are primary buyers for your deals. So you definitely want to bring some deals. And then after the meeting, we're going to have a bonus session free for everybody. Again, how to get started in today's crazy market. And then this coming Thursday, the 11th, we have a lunch and learn with our friend Ray Sasser, and also our other co-host, who is not here with us today, but he will be at Papa's Barbecue on West Little York and 59 on Thursday from 12 to 1:30. Free lunch and learn. You just got to pay for your own meal, but other than that, it's free. Hour and a half to spend with Ray and other investors, and get your questions answered, and potentially find buyers for your deals or partners or lenders. So again, I know I went through that pretty quick, but I want to get to the show. So again, I'm going to remind you, LoneStarREIA.net. That's LoneStarREIA.net. And that's where you can find all the information I just went through, and I will be giving that website out again throughout the show a few more times. So let's get to the really exciting stuff. We have a very special guest today, a good friend of ours. His name is Mark Pantak. He's been an investor for over 30 years. He's a coach, a mentor, and he's very knows his business. He's done over 300 deals, ranging from single family to multifamily to notes, and a lot of his strategy that he uses is creative finance. And so we're going to be talking to him about that today, and he's got a really cool deal to talk about that he did, where he actually didn't have a job, didn't go to the bank to get money, and he, over a 5-year period, he was able to acquire that deal and then turn around and sold it for over a 6-figure profit, and didn't pay any taxes on that. And he did it the legal and legit way. So good morning, Mark. Thank you for joining us, and we're glad to have you. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. And this is an exciting time. As everybody's getting scared, I'm getting excited because now is the time to start buying and getting those deals.
Yeah, and we were talking about that a little bit before the show. There's a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot of quote unquote, doing my air quotes, gurus out there. And one person says it's going to be going up, another person says, oh my gosh, the bottom's about to fall out, and they're all doom and gloom. And it's like, who do you believe? And a lot of times those mixed messages cause people to be confused, and so they take a seat, they step off the curb, and and they don't do anything, and that's the wrong thing to do. The good thing is there's ways to make money in every market, whether it's an up market, a down market, and Mark is proof of that. He's been very successful, like I just mentioned. He's been in the business over 30 years, and we all know that not too long ago we just had 2006, 7, and 8, and then we had to recover from that. And so tell us a little bit more about your strategy and how you were able to survive through that.
Sure. Well, and it's not just survive, it's thrive, because having been through so many market cycles, a lot of people I talk to or I see on Facebook and these different groups and things these days, they're brand new. They've been in the business 2 years, 3 years, maybe 5 years. They weren't there during last market cycle. In fact, some are so young, they were in high school or even elementary school back in the last market cycle. And I'm in my 60s now. I've been there, seen it, done it. I started in the 1980s. And so back in the 1980s, believe it or not, we had interest rates that hit 18%. So people are scared and whining about these high rates. We laugh because the key is your mind, and the key is your mindset and your perception and having confidence. And the way you get confidence is by associating with the right people with like-minded mindset. And that's why it's so important to come out and meet other people who are actually doing deals right now. And I remember when I first got started, and I was scared, and I was curious, and I was in disbelief, and I'm going, this can't be real. I mean, because, like the last 2 years, the price has been going up and up and up and up. And now there's going to be properties that, as we have a recession, I don't expect to crash. I don't go for all the hype and all that kind of stuff, but there is going to be a correction. And a correction is a natural thing. It's like, one of my many mentors in the personal development area, he says the person's all freaking out. It's like, oh my gosh, the trees are all dying. The leaves are turning brown and they're falling off the trees. Everything's dying. No, this is called fall. Are you new here? So it's part of the natural cycle that we've got spring, we got summer, we got fall, and then winter's coming. And so some people in the winter, boy, it gets scarce and they get scared, and we get excited. But see, if you get the education, that's why you got to have the right network. That's why you got to have the right relationships. And if you don't have the money or you don't have the experience, somebody else does. That's why I say both for San Antonio and Houston, you definitely need to come out these meetings and meet us. And I'm definitely going to be there Tuesday, networking, meeting people, because it's made me hundreds of thousands of dollars being a member of these groups, because I meet people, and I'll meet somebody who says, man, I'd love to do one of these deals, but I just don't have the time. Well, I've got a deal. You could be a passive investor. You could be a private lender. You could invest in this apartment deal or this note deal, but I don't want to be a landlord. Well, no, we can set it up where somebody else will do everything for you. Really? I didn't even know that was an option. Sure. And we've got other people. It's like, well, I don't have that kind of money. Well, go out and find a deal and bring it to us that do. And so it doesn't matter. I literally had a 14-year-old kid who attended one of the classes I did to the local RIA in Dallas. We had probably 30, 40 people in the classes, meant once a week. And that 14-year-old actually came every week, listened, did exactly what we told him to do. He made $14,000 at 14 years old on a deal in Dallas, Texas. Why? Because he did what we said to do. Back in the old days, we used this thing called a newspaper. And
what's that? What's a newspaper?
Yeah, what's a newspaper, right, these days? But he saw this ad, called the ad in the paper, and pre-screened with his dad's help, brought it to class. We did a live phone call on the speakerphone right there in front of everybody in class, wrote everything down on the board, and then I said, okay, sounds like the numbers work. Who here in the group has money, would like that deal? A gentleman in the back who was busy raised his hand. He said, yeah, I got the money. I like the deal. So he bought it, and I pulled the kid aside, 14 years old. I mean, right? I wish my dad would have done something like this when I was 14 and said, hey, see that guy? Make sure you get his phone number. Now, you might be a little uncomfortable. That's okay, but I want you to call him. I want you to text him. I want you to bug him. I want you to tell him the following. Hey, I just want to learn. I just want to stay in the deal. I'm willing to cut the grass. I'm willing to clean up the house. I'm willing to paint. Anything that you can do as a 14-year-old, offer to help, because he needs the help. Oh, wow, I never thought about that. Okay, I can do that. And the guy was so impressed with the attitude and the willingness of the 14-year-old kid that they got the house. They were cleaning up the house. Somebody came by and said, hey, would you consider selling this place? I've been looking for a place in this neighborhood. And no, you don't even need to finish fixing it up. I'd rather take it as is. And of course, they bought it at a wholesale price, and this person was willing to buy it at a retail price. And there's a $28,000 profit literally within the first 30 days of the time they were bought it and just cleaning it up. And the guy was so impressed, he made the kid a 50-50 partner and gave him $14,000. And he was a guest on my radio show I had in Dallas back at that time. So I'm telling you, whatever. It's so funny. I had him on the radio. I said, now tell me about your excuses. Do you need a job? I'm 14 years old. You got a driver's license, you got a car, you got credit. I mean, see, all these excuses I hear people make, and I got lots of examples of lots of different people who have done it. But see, the most important thing is what Napoleon Hill taught, Think and Grow Rich, burning desire. If you got the desire, you can do the deal.
Hey, Mark, I got a question for you, but really quick. There is some feedback and popping coming from your phone. If you could pull the phone away from your mouth a little bit, that would help.
Oh, okay.
But my question is, I wanted to back up for the new people that may be listening. And you've been through this multiple times. I came in after the last crash. I started in 2013. But since you've been through multiple cycles and you've been around this, for a lot longer, you mentioned a couple of words, crash and correction.
Yes.
Can you kind of talk a little bit about that and kind of differentiate those and explain a little bit what each means?
Sure. Well, one of the things that was different back in 2008 is I can remember thinking that there was going to be a crash back then only because I was getting contacted by these lenders, and there's a thing out there in the market we called liar loans, also known as stated income. And it's like I was, working to get a loan on a property. And at the time, because again, I did a lot of tax planning and reduced my taxable income. My taxable income was maybe $80,000, and the lender would say, "Oh, no problem. You can put 120, 150. You can put down anything." I'm like, "Well, but I thought this was stated income based on reality." He just laughed. He said, "No, it doesn't matter. They'll make anybody a loan. You don't have to. You can just say you have a job." So that's why they called them liar loans. And there's so many of these loans that happened back in the 2008 timeframe because the underwriting standards were laxed and lightened up, and that all changed from that last market cycle crash because it impacted the government had to do bailouts, the banks, and everything else. So it's never the same. The most important thing to understand is there's always a market cycle, and each time it's never the same. So this particular time, there are going to be layoffs. We're already, if you pay attention, some people will lose their jobs, and unfortunately, some people who lose their jobs will not immediately get a job just like that job. And I've helped a lot of people even when I didn't buy their house. They heard me on the radio or somebody brought me to them or whatever, and I said, "Let me go talk to Wells Fargo for you, and let me see what I can do." And there's a guy right here in San Antonio, and he was so grateful because I knew what to do, I knew what to say, and I helped him to get more time and stop the foreclosure. So we help a lot of people keep their homes too. But the most important thing to understand is the importance of getting educated and not operate from fear, operate from knowledge and experience instead of fear. And that's why you want to come every month to these meetings. They're very affordable, and they're in San Antonio, and next Tuesday in San Antonio, the speaker's going to be fantastic talking about how to find these deals, the hidden market. Because most people, just think, "Oh, I'm just going to go on the MLS, the multiple listing service, and I bought plenty there." Most of the deals I have bought are what's called off market, and some of the very best ones have been word of mouth referrals because I've constantly built my network and relationship because I go to these meetings and I meet people, and somebody who's new comes across something and says, "I don't know what to do." One of the better deals I did, I actually posted on Facebook in a group of contractors, and a guy who cut yards, he had a guy who was in his 90s in hospice, and it was offered to him for 45. He didn't have the money, didn't know what to do, but brought it to me. He got paid. I bought the house, and I didn't pay 45, but it still was a good deal for everybody. And that's the most important thing to understand. We're in this business to help people. The goal is it's win-win. Everybody wins all the way around. That's the important thing. Hopefully that helps.
And in building relationships, that's the key. It's not just coming to meet people. The key is to follow up. Exchange business cards at the meeting, talk a little bit, great. But then it's what you do after the meeting, follow up, call them, set up a lunch, set up a Zoom call, set up coffee, and find out how you can bring value to their business. And then they'll want to know how they can bring value to your business. And then you can start a relationship. It's just like, dating somebody. You don't meet somebody and then 2 days later you get married. No, you go through a dating process and you build your relationship. And it's the same thing in real estate. You do the same thing. You build that relationship.
Excellent point. Yeah. And so that's the thing to understand, because I got these new people who just get started and they say, I called 5 people, nobody was motivated. Like, well, plan on calling or talking to about 100 people. And it is a numbers game. We've always heard that. But also, out of 100 people, maybe 1 out of 10 or 10 out of 100 will actually have a problem. Most people might want to sell, but they don't need to sell. And they're only looking for top dollar retail. And then there's a certain smaller percentage who have a problem, and maybe selling through the MLS, what's called the multiple listing services realtors use, isn't always the only or best solution. I've had people who are veterans and they were being shipped out. They don't exactly give you 6 months notice. Sometimes it's 6 weeks or 6 days or even 6 hours, and you don't want to be overseas or moved around the country as a veteran, and now you got a house sitting there vacant, you're a long distance landlord. So everybody's got circumstances. Myself, my own family, we got a house we're going to be selling up in Michigan, and my mom had passed away. So people lose jobs, people have divorces, kids grow up. Life happens and things change, and people have lots of different reasons for selling. And so the most important thing, your focus is on them and what their needs are, and asking questions and listening and how can we help.
Yeah, and so let's go ahead and jump into that deal that we were talking about a little bit ago, where you made that 6-figure profit. You use what everybody has heard, a lot of people have heard the term creative financing, and the more creative that you can get on a deal and make it to where it solves the seller or the homeowner's problem, and you can still make a profit, those are the deals that you want to be in. Because like another thing that another aspect of that deal is, Mark, you mentioned you didn't have a job and you didn't go to the bank and get a loan. You actually you got creative and structured the deal in a certain way that you didn't need that.
And that's why it's so important to join these local RIA groups like this, because that's where you build these relationships, where there's people with the money, with the experience. And if you don't know what to do, there's people like Ray and myself and yourself that we do know. And you can approach us and you can talk to us. And we're just regular people, just like anybody else listening right now. And I remember for years, I'd listen on the radio and say, wow, I wish I could be like one of those people. Well, you can. You can come meet us in person. And so what happened in this particular situation is a young lady just getting started, and she'd bought one of these website type things. And I looked her website over and I said, where's the phone number? And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, the kind of client you're really looking for is older, and they don't want to fill out the little box. They want to pick up the phone and talk to a live person. So she made that correction. And then within a week, she's calling me all screaming, excited. Oh my gosh, I got one. And it's like, she named the street, the house in the street there in Houston over in Spring Branch, and it's like one I knew very well because I have target areas I work, and I know the value, and I know everything in advance. So anyways, I said, well, yeah, the numbers sound great. Let me get on the phone. I was actually in El Paso at the time, where I was doing a deal there, El Paso, Texas, on the border with New Mexico and Mexico. But in any case, I talked to the guy, said, I'll be flying in tomorrow, and I'd like to meet you. And so he said to her, he'd take 60, but then she got a little too excited. So by the time he talked to me, it was 70. And you got to be careful about that, too. There's lots of things about this. And I said, what happened? He said, well, she was so excited, I figured my price must be too low. And I looked at her. I was like, Anyway, so I said, well, let's see what we can do here, because I knew I'd done my homework that the property's worth about 125. It was in Spring Branch, in an up-and-coming area where they're actually going to be tearing down houses like this and taking the old one-story built in the 50s and make them two-story newer houses with the builders and stuff. So there's things I knew. That's the important part, is getting the education so you understand the market and you understand market trends and what's going on. That's one of the things we offer at the local Real Estate Investment Association. In any case, that being said, I sat down with the guy and I said, well, the only way I can see to make these numbers, because 60 maybe I could have done for cash, but at 70, here's what we'll need to do. You've got an existing first lien for $50,000. That's right. And that first lien you've been paying on, you've got good credit. We want to protect that. And so in that particular situation, you've been paying for 20 years. It's only got 10 years remaining. I'd hate to pay off a good loan like that. Every single month as we make a payment, they'll be paying more principal than interest. Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. So I said, here's what I can do. what's the least amount of cash you need to just move on with your life? He said, well, I got to have at least 10,000. I said, well, the house needs foundation repairs, and the house needs a new roof, and the kitchen and bathroom need updating. And we went over all the stuff that the house really needed. And he said, yeah, I understand, but it is livable. I've been living here. I said, yeah, I understand. So we went back and forth a little bit. It's part of the process. And bottom line, what ended up happening is we left the first lien in place. It's called subject to the existing financing, and there's legal ways to do it. I emphasize there's always legal and not legal ways, and a lot of it has to do with making sure you have the right attorney on your team. Real estate investing, as Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad, says, real estate investing is very much a team sport. So you got to make sure you have the right people and advisors on your team, everything from a real estate broker to an appraiser to an inspector to an attorney to a title company, all these people, and that's who you can learn and meet through the local Real Estate Investor Association. And we have vendors that are like that too that we've checked out, so you listen for those. But what ended up happening then is I took over that first lien for $50. He agreed to a second lien at $10,000 at 0% interest. Now, why would somebody do 0% interest? Well, I was prepared, and when I showed up in my presentation, I opened up the little 3-ring binder and I said, see right here, look at this. There's banks. They're only offering that low interest rate. And look right here, there's this car dealership. You buy a car, you get 0% financing. He said, oh, well, yeah, that's a good point. Didn't think about that. So he agreed to 0%, which helped make the deal, and then I had no payments. And I said, well, all the money's going to go to fix the property and make that mortgage payment, and then eventually we're going to resell, and we do, it'll all get paid off. Oh, well, when's that going to happen? Hard to say. I can't make any promises I can't keep, other than I'll make the payments and fix the property, and eventually it'll get sold. Well, okay. So we did everything through a title company. We did everything with an attorney, with the right paperwork. We did everything correct, so all parties were protected. I ended up renting out that house. Then it got tough in that economic cycle. I actually moved in and lived there for 2 out of the 5 years, which is another little thing you learn. We have speakers come in, talk about taxes. There's a certain area of the taxes that if you live in your personal residence for 2 out of 5 years and sell, you can make up to $250,000. I'm not giving any legal or accounting advice, by the way. I'm just sharing my experience. Got to give that disclaimer, but always seek proper counsel. And anyway, but what I did, I'm just sharing what I did, is I got the right advisors and team, and they told me what I could do. So when I live in the house for 2 out of 5 years, I could make up to $250,000 tax-free. There's a certain part of the IRS tax code. So 5 years later, I had I didn't mention, where did I get the $10,000 from? I had another it's called a private lender. It's an individual who has money in the IRA, or they have some cash, maybe stock market's volatile, going down, and they're like, where can I put my money? So because we had an existing relationship, and even though it was the first lien and the seller was taking a second lien, again, we explain these in person in these classes that we teach very affordably. We did what's called a third position wrap. So the private lender, who had enough experience, he understood that he was protected because he would know that the first and second lien were being paid, and the attorney structured everything. So he loaned me $15,000, and because it was a small amount of money, I was willing to pay him 15% interest, which he was very happy about, but I was happy to pay that just to get the deal done. So I ended up having zero of my own money. I used his $15,000 at closing to pay the seller his $10,000 cash. I had $5,000 left over out of the 15 to go ahead and pay for some of the closing costs. And then also through the local RIA group, I had somebody who could do a foundation repair that would normally, these big names out there, they charge $400 a pier. I got done for $100 a pier, huge savings. That's another reason why you want to be a member of the local RIA. But bottom line, what ended up happening is I did just enough to stabilize that foundation, patch the roof, and hold on. And then 5 years later, that lender, the private lender, said, hey, my loan was for 5 years. You going to refinance or pay it off and sell it, or what are you going to do? I said, well, I haven't decided yet. He said, you should sell it. I said, really? Yeah, prices have gone up, and the market's flipped. So that's part of that crash thing. So back then in 2008, the market had crashed. And this was 2009 when I bought it the next year. And so 5 years later, 2014, those 5 years go by quick. 2014, the market was crazy the other way. So it goes crazy one direction, crazy the other direction. We had 20 people the very first week who made offers. We had 20 people on a Tuesday night, on a Wednesday night coming, begging, saying, please, please take me. The realtor who listed it for me on a flat fee listing said she thought 125. He said, no, I'm going to get over 150. She said, how are you going to do that? It won't even appraise for that. I said, it won't matter. This will be a cash deal. I ended up selling it for over $170,000 cash, even though it needed a roof and even though it needed some updating and all that. But property values had begun to go the other direction. From going down, they went up. So things go up, things go down. And so I made over $100,000. I made it tax-free because I lived in the house for 2 out of 5 years. These are the kind of things we have CPAs and professionals and experts come in and educate people on all these different things you need to know to be financially successful. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, that sounds like a really exciting deal. I mean, if you're out there listening, raise your hand if you want to do a deal like that. No, I'm just kidding. Hopefully you're not driving. Do not raise your hand.
Yeah, we do deals like this on a regular basis simply because one of the things is we're working with motivated sellers, and that makes a big difference. I've had people say all the time, well, I'm only talking to people who want cash, not only cash. They say the property's worth 200 and they'll take 220. Ha ha. I say, yeah, well, that was where we were the last 2 years, but things are starting to change. And if you start paying attention, houses are starting to sit. People are getting nervous. I mean, one of the favorite niches I like is dealing with builders. I mean, I could do a whole seminar, a whole radio session just on the opportunities coming up with builders.
Yeah, and that's a all-day seminar right there.
An all-day seminar right there, yes. But there's lots of opportunity, lots of niches. I mean, right now, did you know there's 10,000 people a day turning 65? So there's people who are turning 65 and they've got money in the retirement plan or maybe a 401k, and you can roll it over to a self-directed IRA. We have vendors that help with that too. And so literally, if somebody says, well, I don't want to deal with tenants or toilets or contractors or headaches, I come to the meeting. Come to the meeting and learn how you can be a passive investor. And we got people being passive investors as a private lender on the house, or they can invest in a note. We get education about that, or an apartment. We just bought an apartment complex here just south of San Antonio, 40 units, and we got it for under $4 million, and we've raised the rents. And already in the first year, the value is going up probably about $1 million. As rents go up, values of commercial and multifamily and apartments and things like that go up too. So whatever niche opportunity you're interested in, I also work with tax liens and tax deeds. That's very lucrative, but I've been at this for over 30 years. So when you're first starting out, you pick one thing and you stick with that one thing. You learn how to do that one thing, be successful. But I mean, you give me 5 different people, we got 5 different things you could do. It's on a case-by-case basis depending on where you're at.
So let's talk about notes for a few minutes. For one, explain, what a note is and what a note investor is. Right.
Well, part of what happens a lot of times is I actually create notes that's seller financing. So in other words, most of the time the way we think is it's like, well, in order to buy a house, if you go mostly real estate agents, I speak at real estate offices all the time too, by the way, to help educate realtors and brokers about this, because one option is, yes, you've got the good credit, you got the good credit score, you got everything they require, you can jump through all the hoops, and you can go to a traditional bank or financer or loan broker or whatever and get a 30-year loan, and that's one option. Another option is you come in with all cash. I quite often buy properties all cash. It's just not my cash. Now, if some people do it, it's the bank's cash. What I do is I have people where it's their cash, and sometimes it's their retirement money. There's literally billions and trillions of dollars of retirement money out there trying to figure out, because their financial advisor, back when they're in their 40s, I mean, I'm in my 60s now, 20 years ago, they said, well, don't worry about it. We'll get you, 8 to 10% on your money. Well, that was common 20 years ago. Never seen interest rates go as low as they have right now. And so part of what's happened is there's people at their bank who are getting 0.5%, the mutual fund money market. And there's all kind of things where people didn't get anywhere near that 8 to 10% rate. And even if they had $1 million, they were hoping $1 million, 10%, that's $100,000 a year. But instead they're getting 4% and they're making $40,000 when they're planning on $100,000. So that right there is the key. And so part of the note thing then comes into play. is that people will actually finance the sale because they own it free and clear. They got older, they got retired, and now if they got cash, sometimes says, well, where am I going to put that money? Well, you know the property. Why don't you be the bank? Oh, how can I do that? We get the attorney with the title company, we get all the professionals, we do everything correctly, and you have the first lien on that property just like the bank would. And if the person doesn't pay, then you get the property back. Texas is the very best state to make loans like that because only 21 days from the time it's filed at the courthouse, it forecloses and you get the property back. Some places like New York, it can be 5 to 7 years. It's crazy. So each state has its own law. So I educate people all the time about the value of offering seller financing. As a professional investor, I often will sell properties on seller financing. Most of the ones I'm doing are in smaller towns where the property's been vacant, abandoned for a while, somebody passed away, it's been sitting there deteriorating. I picked this property really cheap for all cash, like $10,000, maybe put $10,000 in it, all in for $20,000, and then turn around and sell it for $40,000, $50,000 because somebody in that small town can't qualify for a loan, or banks won't make loans that small. And so we also, in Spanish, it's this dueño y dueño, owner to owner, huge demand in the Hispanic community, in minorities, in low-income areas. One thing that will not change, people will need a place to live. They'll need a roof over their head. So whether you're doing apartment investing or mobile home investing or house investing or a landlord or a resale, see, the ones that you don't want to be a landlord, those are great to seller finance on. And the goal is to get about 20% down. So you got a large enough down payment that if they don't pay, you can cover those monthly payments. So if they don't pay, you got the money to make the repairs. If they don't pay, you got the cash because you got 20% down on a $100,000 house. That's $20,000. You just got to make sure you don't spend it. You set some of the money aside so you can deal with the problems, and they do come. I mean, nothing's 100%, but nothing's 100% good or bad. So you anticipate some people won't pay. Now, there's people out there that they don't know how to deal with all these things, and they just want to invest. So once I create a note, let's suppose, we go ahead and we come to an agreement. You give me 20% down on a $100,000 house. It's an $80,000 first lien. We're typically structuring those at a higher rate, maybe 8 or 9%, 9.9 as the rate, as long as the monthly payment you can afford it. You still got to qualify, but now you're making mortgage payments to me every month, and we have the taxes and the insurance are escrowed included in that payment ideally, and so everything's done legally and everything's done correct, so everybody's protected. And now I'm receiving this monthly payment. I can turn around and take that piece of paper, and there's a marketplace out there to sell that. Now it doesn't sell at the full $80,000 price. It's going to sell at a slight discount, but what that slight discount does, if I can pay $70,000 for an amount that's a face amount of 80, that discount gives me a higher return on my money or my yield, and so my return might go from 10% to 12%. Now again, disclaimer, we're not promising or guaranteeing any investment or rate of return. We're not selling any investments here. We're just offering educational purposes. That's all we're doing here, nothing more. So we recommend make sure you get your financial advisor, your attorney, CPA, or whoever. Always get your proper legal and whatever kind of advice you need to get. So we're giving examples here. But I bought these notes. Matter of fact, I'll give you a quick example of one. Over in the Beaumont, Port Arthur area, I had a young man, and there was a lady, and she wasn't paying. So we were offering to buy that property, and it needed repairs. And it was sitting vacant. And anyways, we found out there's an existing first lien on it for about $16,000 that somebody seller financed, and the lady had moved away. It was actually over in Paris, Texas, near the border with Oklahoma. So I reached out to the person who was not getting the monthly payments on the note, and I said, hey, did you really want to foreclose on this lady? No. Do you want to deal with all the headache and the repairs and all that? No. Do you want to take it back? No. Well, maybe we could work something out. I could just pay you cash. Oh, she's excited. She thought she's about to get $16,000. I said, well, I can't quite pay you that much because there's going to be, headaches and risk and legal and attorney, all this kind of stuff. She said, well, what can you do? And I offered her $6,000, and she said, I'll take it. So that $16,000 note, because it was what's called non-performing, pre-foreclosure, and behind on payments, behind on repairs, that in fact hadn't paid taxes, hadn't paid insurance. It was a mess. But that's what I do, is I come in and I fix these messes, and I get well paid. So we ended up buying that property not only for 6. There's an advanced strategy called hypothecation, where we borrowed $20,000 against that property, used an attorney, did everything right, and the person put up the money. We had no money in the deal. Paid the person the $6,000, now controlled the note. That was actually a business associate of mine who I was training. And then I was the buyer of the property. Long story, we started foreclosing. There was a fire. It burned down. There was a legal situation. But the insurance we got in the settlement was $25,000. So the $6,000 became $25,000, but only because I was experienced and I knew what to do. That's why you got to be thinking team. That's why you want to come to local RIA, and that's why you understand the risks and the rewards. And man, the rewards are fantastic once you know what you're doing. Hopefully that helps.
Absolutely. Every bit of what you've been talking about today has been helpful. I hope you guys out there listening and watching, hopefully you have been taking notes, and also hopefully you get to come out and meet Mark. He will be at our meetings. We are, again, our next meeting in San Antonio, if you're in the San Antonio area, is coming up this Tuesday, August 9th. And then in Houston is going to be next Saturday, August 13th. We're trying to talk Mark into coming down for that. We'll see how that works out. But you can find out all of our information again at LoneStarRIA.net. That's LoneStarREIA.net. And you can find out all of our upcoming events. You'll see once you get to that website, you'll see a logo for Alamo RIA and a logo for Greater Houston RIA. And just click on one of those in whichever area you want to attend, and you can see all of our information as well. So this is great. Let's go ahead and continue. And we've talked about subject to, and we've talked about notes. Now, what I want to Mark, I want to pick your brain on is for the people that we did talk about it a little bit at the beginning of the show, but I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper. We have about 10 minutes left, and I wanted to save this segment and have it for the people that are on the fence, or maybe they're not sure what their next step should be. Is real estate for me? Should I get in it? Is it too late? What made you personally, what made you get in it, and then how did you get going in it?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked me that. Well, I was somebody who was shy, introverted, avoided people, but I was always interested in learning. And I love nature and I love outdoors, and I was reading books on that. And matter of fact, originally I was the youngest licensed game bird breeder in Michigan at age 12, raising ringneck pheasants, bobwhite quail, chukar partridge, mallard ducks. I was just fascinated, really into that. And I was doing all that at 12 and 14, and then I was going to go into that field until I found out how much it didn't pay. And I'm thinking to myself, now this is back in the 70s and all that, and I'm thinking, how am I going to make it on $12,000 a year? I might have to do something else. So I got interested in psychology. I was actually a runner, and I got the 2-mile school record. I went from over 12 minutes to under 10 minutes, and that was all about mindset and reading Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, and all this kind of stuff about the mind-body relationship, and I broke 10 minutes for the school record. And all this then laid the foundation of an interest in psychology, which led to an interest in business and sales and all these different things. And my mom found a book at a garage sale or flea market or whatever. It was for $1. You know how you could buy these books. And it was how I turned $1,000 into $1 million investing in real estate in my spare time. And she said, well, I'll get that for my son Mark. And she got it and gave it to me, and I devoured it. And this guy started with little or no money. He bought a property, fixed it up, increased the value, refinanced it, took the money back out, then bought 2, then duplicated it again. Now, this is back in the 50s, a guy named William Nickerson. And I remember I was so excited because I was a teenager and I was going to college, local community college, and I saw a full-page ad in the newspaper, Get Rich Investing in Real Estate, part-time, full-time, and I went to one of these big 90-minute presentations at the fancy hotel, and there'd been a guy named Albert Lowry who'd gotten that book, applied that book, became a millionaire. He was a butcher in Canada, and he wrote a book called How to Become Financially Independent in Real Estate, and that became a bestseller, and the two had teamed up creating the Lowry Nickerson seminars back in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. So I go to this seminar, and I'm there, and it's like $300. I mean, back in those days, that might have been $30,000 for me. And I thought, wow, where would I get that kind of money? I was a broke college student, but I made note that they had these support groups, which is called a Real Estate Investor Association that they created. And I'll never forget, I went to Dallas, Texas, and I went to one of those meetings, and I met a guy in his 30s, fairly young, and he had already, at 35, bought and had 30 properties in a suburb of Dallas. And I said, and he just looked average, like it, and it just impacted my belief. Meeting people were just average people like me who'd actually started with nothing and had done it. And that's why it's so important to come out to these meetings and find out for yourself, because again, there's no high pressure, no twisting your arm, no charging you some here. There's gurus out there that do these seminars, and nowadays they charge $25,000, $50,000, crazy amounts of money. A local real estate investor association like Ray has, excuse me, and you have, is a nonprofit. And so for its benefit of the members. And so the thing to understand with that is it's very affordable. I mean, I don't know, can people come out free first time as a guest?
Absolutely, they can. They can definitely come out. They're first-time guests. It's free, and from time to time, we'll even waive that. We'll even say, just come on out and join us. Like if we have a special meeting, for example, like Tony Young's and Ernie Garcia. These are two spectacular speakers. We want you to come out there and learn. And even if we do charge for example, if you're not a first-time guest and you're still not quite a member, the meetings are only like $30. It's very nominal and extremely overvalued. You get way more than
for the information you get, for the value you get in terms of the networking. I mean, normally food's provided too. So, I mean, because I've had people say, well, I'm going to have to come right after work and I haven't had a chance to eat. No, come. We got food, we got refreshments, we've got the speakers, we got the networking. And I'm telling you, it can change your life. It changed my life. So back to my humble beginnings when I got started, I graduated college. I moved to Dallas, Texas. I joined the local RIA group, and the RIA group, and learning and meeting people like you, like Ray, like me, and those were those relationships that I established back at the beginning, that when I didn't know where to get the money, they said, well, there's this thing called a hard money lender. Oh, wow. There's this and there's that, and there's seller finance, there's creative finance, there's lease options, there's subject to, there's so many things you don't even know you don't know. And it's like typically I came away, my head was spinning, but the most important thing is I came back. And then they had like a Saturday session or a weekend session or all these sessions. And over the years, as I was successful, people said, hey, would you share your experience with others, because you've had so many people you've helped. And there was actually what we call a wholesale focus group, and that's where all you do is you go out and you find a property, you get it under contract, and then you sell or assign the contract, not the property, because that's what you have. You don't own the property, you own a piece of paper that gives you the right. And so I've done that literally hundreds of times and made $5, $10, even $20,000 assigning my interest to the right to buy that property. And I mean, I could go on. I mean, maybe we'll come in Houston, and I'm in San Antonio right now. But I've worked with Ray in the past, and we actually did a very affordable bus tour where we had two buses. We got 5 minutes left. And so there's so much education that's so affordable compared to the other options. I mean, yeah, there's YouTube University. There's a lot of stuff out there, but there's a lot of gurus. And then you go down the rabbit hole, and now they want to charge you these huge amounts of money. And you can come locally right there in Houston, right there in San Antonio, and meet us and hear about these deals. And typically we do a case study. So it's just so valuable, the networking and the relationship, the vendors. I mean, just the vendors. I mean, where do I find this hard money lender? Well, here, let me take you over to Bob or whoever right here. I'll introduce you. And so the resources and the value and the education, the networking, and it's just like Home Depot. I mean, I have saved so much money. There was a thing with painting too. I mean, the paint contractor said, oh, I'll have a better deal. And we went, and I was like 5 or 10% less than his best deal. So I saved hundreds and eventually thousands of dollars on paint and things, and that paid for itself too. So there's just so many things between the learning and the networking. I've had people I met that brought me a deal. Where do you find these deals? Somebody was a wholesaler, had a deal. My very first deal, I was a bird dog, which means that I had a deal. I didn't even know how to fill out a contract. I didn't know how to estimate the repairs. I didn't know how to do any of those things, but there was somebody who was like you or Ray, and I brought it to them. They bought it, and they saw me at the next meeting and said, hey, I got something for you. And they wrote me a check for $500 just for finding and bringing them a deal. And I didn't even know what I was doing. So yeah. the opportunities are vast. Go ahead.
The other thing that I wanted to kind of touch on is something that we've said a few times on today's show, and we talk a lot about it on our shows here, and that's mindset. And I got to tell this really quick story. I got to brag on our buddy Ray, and hopefully I don't rain on his parade here, but I'm gonna brag on him really quick because we got to get wrapped up here. But mindset, Ray is he's not an old man, but he's not a young man either. He's not a spring chicken. And he accomplished something over the last week or two. He went to Iowa, and he went on a bike ride, and he rode over 400 and I think it was like 468 miles or something like that, at his age. And he trained for probably, it was either 2 or 3 months, maybe 4 months. And he, me and him talk on a daily basis, and he was constantly riding, and he was constantly increasing his mileage that he was riding every day. And he had an accountability partner and basically kind of like a mentor. I mean, Ray's a mentor, but he's got a mentor. There's a guy in San Antonio that comes to our meetings. His name is Brian, and he rides bikes. Well, anyway, Ray trained, and he was determined he was going to do this, and he did it. And so we're going to talk about that, and at the meeting, come up, shake Ray's hand, and say, great job, and ask him how it went, because it was really good for him to do that. But I just got word in my ear that we are to the end of our show. We're going to wrap up here very shortly. But Mark, in 20 seconds, I know it's kind of hard for you to do, but in 20 seconds, give a closing statement of like one last piece of advice, and that way I can close out the show after your 20 seconds.
Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait. We're entering into a recession, which is the best time to buy, the best time to learn, the best time to get financially free. And I'm telling you, if you'll come and keep coming back, we can show you, like you have thousands of others, how to be able to quit your job, how to own your life, and how to spend time with your family. So the biggest thing that people want is the financial freedom and the time, and that's what we do at these local real estate groups, is you meet people who've actually done it. It impacts your belief. It's so valuable. Please come and join us. Look forward to meet you and shake your hand.
Hey, Mark, thank you for being on the show today. It was a great show. I had fun. Hopefully the listeners had fun. If you did, raise your hand, give us a thumbs up, and we will see you at our next meetings. Go to LoneStarREIA.net. That's LoneStarREIA.net. And we will see you out there, and let's go make some deals and have fun.
Thank you for listening to the Massive Passive Show, where we teach investors how to get off the hamster wheel of transactional real estate. Hi, I'm Becky Fields, president of the Greater Houston REIA, and would like to invite you to join us at our regular monthly REIA meetings on the second Saturday morning each month. If you're in the San Antonio area, the Alamo REIA meets on the evening of the second Tuesday each month. Go to LoneStarREIA.org for more information.